Now, this is an atlas put together by this tremendous Jewish scholar by the name of Chaim Beinart. I had read previously that he was originally born in Russia to a Hasidic family. One way or another, I don't know all the details. He wound up in Eretz Yisrael and he became a professor of history, Jewish history. This is absolutely fantastic. I titled this series How the Jews Survived the Middle Ages. And actually, it's medieval Europe. You have to look at it like this. The Roman Empire stretched through major parts of the world at its height, and it had tremendous effect. But in the fourth century, Constantine, the emperor, converted everything into Catholicism instead. In other words, you didn't need armies anymore. Well, you actually did, but the armies were always fighting for the banner of morality, Christendom, and so on and so forth. It created tremendous attention with the Jewish people. These are, after all, the Romans, the same Romans who conquered Palestine, who have a tremendous hate for Jews. And that hate continued. They became controlled over all different kinds of areas. There was a pope and the headmaster, let's say, of the Catholic religion, nowhere worse than Spain, which is reviving its Jew hatred right now. Let's go into the book and see where we're at, because we see that, in fact, it is a question of the fact that the Jewish people survived the Middle Ages. Let's come over here. Now, yesterday in our search, we went through the various different states, and there were actually multiple states all over Italy. Now we're going to come to something that's very interesting. These are the travels of a man. Come on down here. The name of David Reuveini. This is in the 1500s. Now we're going to get an idea where David Reuveini was after we read this section. And we're going to come down like this. So he says in 1524-25, shortly after Palestine was conquered by Sultan Selim, the Turks, the Ottomans, David Reuveini appeared from the east and proposed the grandiose scheme of organizing a Jewish-Christian military campaign against the Ottoman Empire. This Ottoman Empire was threatening Christianity, as you know that it was pulled itself all the way up to the gates of Vienna. So it was spread across the Balkans. It's a problem today. It was spread across major parts of Hungary. So anyway, his plan called for Pope Clement VII to make peace between the Emperor Charles V and King Francis I of France. Make that, apparently they were at war with each other. Then to give him a letter of recommendation to the Emperor of Ethiopia. The combined forces would execute a flanking military campaign against the Ottoman Empire, while the Jews of Habor, which I'm not really familiar with Habor, but he has a map on it, so we'll see, led by Reuveini's brother, would join the forces and conquer Palestine. Now, I'm thinking that this is at a time where you don't have any shuttle diplomacy going on here. It took time to ride basically a sailboat from a boat with sails. Does that sound better? Ship with sails across the Mediterranean. I mean, that's not something you do in an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or a day or even a week. This is a very long thing through weather and all kinds of things. This guy's moving around. The plan was based upon the belief that the soldiers of Habor were brave warriors who lacked only weapons for their assured victory. Now it says it's important to note that this plan was proposed by a Jew to the Christian world for a war against the Ottomans, who, after conquering Palestine, opened their gates to Jewish and converso refugees from Spain. That's the major thing about it, is that the Ottomans were very good to the Jews. They took us in. In Egypt and North Africa, they controlled those areas. in the Middle East, of course. But they took us in. Reuveini relates in his diary that the Pope found the plan plausible, but said he was unable to make peace between Charles V and Francis I, who was at that time negotiating for a treaty with the Turks. It was a very complicated little thing. The Pope referred Reuveini to John III, King of Portugal. Now remember, once again, this man Reuveini, he's traveling by boat and by land. I mean, you're talking about there are no motor cars, by cart and by wagon. So he gave him a letter of recommendation. This is incredible. This is a Jew who from the Middle East somewhere, standing in front of the Pope. In referring Reuveini to Portugal, the Pope no doubt wished to rely on Portuguese experience of voyages and discovery. In particular, he may have borne in mind that their reputation for voyages to the East, perhaps thinking they might operate from their overseas colony or from places discovered in their voyages around Africa. However, doubt has been cast on this supposition by a non-Jewish source. A letter by Marco Foscari, the Venetian representative in Rome, written on 13 March 1524, while Reuveini was still in Rome, states that it was Reuveini who suggested the visit to Portugal. Now, you know, Portugal for a Jew is a really, really dangerous place to go. Reuveini requested and also received a second letter to the Emperor of Ethiopia, because I guess the plan is we're maybe going to find out where this place Habor was, from which we learned that he promised the Pope his loyalty to the Holy See and the Christian world if his plan succeeded. His appearance before the King of Portugal had a resounding effect upon the conversos. Now so he got to the King of Portugal. Here's a Jewish man. This is a place that in 1496 all the Jews were converted to Christianity. And they enforced it. So all of a sudden, this man appears who is a Jew, and he speaks to the king. I don't know in those days how messages got out. I think everybody lived a lot closer together than they do today. I don't know. They didn't have newspapers. Obviously, they didn't have radios and television. The news gets out. It had a resounding effect upon the conversos, one of whom was a man by the name of Diogo Pires. Inspired by Reuveini, he returned to Judaism, had himself circumcised, which you can imagine in that age at that time was very painful, but he did it. He circumcises himself and took the Hebrew name of Shlomo Molko. I'm going to pronounce this name Shlomo, because that's where I've heard it before. Shlomo probably spent some time studying Kabbalah in Salonika, where he possibly met Yosef Karo, who was greatly impressed by Molko. Returning to Italy in 1529, he was by then convinced he was the Messiah. This is Shlomo Molko now. In 1530, he appeared before Pope Clement VII, who recognized him as a visionary because apparently he had correctly predicted the Tiber's overflowing in the flood of Rome in 1530. So the Pope, you know, here you're dancing in the island with the head lion here in the lion's den. Now the strange appearance of David Reuveini, together with Shlomo Molko, jointly and severally before Pope and kings, it's an amazing thing. They had the chutzpah. This is the word chutzpah. So before Pope and kings, the protection offered by the Pope, particularly to Molko, considering that at one time he was a converso, converso was a Catholic who returned to Judaism, and the combined mission to Emperor Charles V is food for thought. How do they get away with this? Well, obviously, I would say, you know, myself, we're having a Taurus son, and they had the money. They had enough money to dress themselves up to travel in some kind of a class that would allow them to appear before the king, because apparently you could. It's difficult to determine whether this was a messianic phenomenon linked to a political plan, for this was the period of eschatological fervor. Everybody was looking for the Messiah. Even a personality like Don Isaac of Barbanel had calculated the year of redemption from 1503 and then 1531 as the year for the coming of the Messiah. Messiah probably did come. When he got there, though, it wasn't time. David Reuveini and Shlomo Molko were arrested by order of King Charles V, that same Portuguese king. Reuveini, imprisoned, died in an Inquisition prison in Spain, in the town of Llerena, pronounce it, while Molko died as a martyr at the stake. Despite their tragic end, the fact that Jews were able to negotiate openly with heads of state is most significant. If we examine this fact in conjunction with the activities of former conversos during the 16th century, we may perhaps gain some insight into the origin of the new ideas in Weltanschauung in Jewish thinking. There is no doubt that they were fully acquainted with the political climate and balance of power within Christianity. Now, how did they learn all of this and the rest of the world, and they were therefore able to present a plausible case to the heads of state? The appearance of David Reuveini caused a great stir amongst Jews and conversos. Now, we're going to see a little bit about this. So, let me get this up here a little bit. Put a little light on it. It says like this. So, let's look at this is the Middle East. This is Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia was a big part of this plan. I'm just not sure that I understand it. So, south of Israel, I guess, I don't know what this area, this is today Saudi Arabia, I'm guessing. 1480's presumed birth date in a place that I think is called Hara. Number 2, he made this journey along the Nile River all the way up through Ethiopia, which is mentioned twice in the description. I don't know why. Maybe that's part of the plan. And then all the way up through Cairo and through Gaza, apparently, this area, and then outward. That was his path. Now let's see a little bit more about this. The travels of David Reuveini. Let's find number Aleph. I know there's got to be number 1, rather. There's got to be a 1 here, no? Okay, well, I don't see a 1. I see a 5. Then I see a 4. Okay, the 1, 2, 3 was the beginning of his journey that came this way, and here we have from Alexandria he sailed. So I imagine all this trip, he must be a very strong young man to be able to do all of this traveling. It's very fatiguing. In 1523, he arrives in the city, requests help from local Jews to meet the Pope. Okay, that makes sense. Number 1524, in the year 1524, let's come down lower. In the year 1524, meets with Cardinal Edigio da Viterbo. Let's try it again. Viterbo. Edigio da Viterbo, who aids him to meet Pope Clement VII. Now, I can't imagine he'd do anything without paying for it. So that's my thinking. So somehow he did. Proposes treaty with him against the Turks. Let's find number 6. It's way down here. Now we find him now, that was in 1524. The next year arrives in Portugal, receives from king officials sail conduct acknowledging his ambassadorial status. So now he's like an ambassador. From where? So he says then number 7. Where is 7 now? Come on, baby, let that good time roll now. Here it is. During travels, attracts many conversos. Maintains contacts with North African Jews. In the year 1527, he was expelled from Portugal, arrested aboard ship off coast of Spain, released at the behest of the king, Charles V, who later will imprison him. Let's find number 9. November 1530, after touring Italian cities, appears here attended by servants and preaches redemption of Jews. Meets with Shlomo Molko. Shlomo Molko. Number 10. Summer of 1532, Reuveini and Molko meet with Joseph of Rosheim and Charles V. Both are arrested and sent to Mantua, which is, we call this Mantua, where Molko is martyred at the stake. So here is Mantua in northern Italy. It's there today. That's number 10. And there is an 11. During travels attracts many converts. That was wrong. When David Reuveini arrives in Spain, it's like asking to visit Leavenworth when they're looking for you. 1538, he's in prison and he dies in prison. These are incredible things, absolutely incredible. So, as I said, and I've said this several times, and this is a real chiddush, because I'm not Sephardic, of course, but I wouldn't know, that all of the Jews that fled to Portugal were at one time forced into Catholicism. So you have this in our past. People, the Jews that were not Catholics, not at all, needed to get out, but the generations come and go. And so get further and further away from our heritage. And these are things that we find later on as we look at this in more detail. This is Baruch Fleischman. You've been listening to the Tikkun Elevator Call Out.